Hi guys, it's Kate Brochu, and you're listening to TAPinto Westfield's podcast series.
Chris Barron speaking.
I recently had the opportunity to sit down with Spin Doctors frontman Chris Barron. He's getting ready to visit our area to perform his latest solo album, Angels and One-Armed Jugglers, right here at the JCC in Scotch Plains on Saturday, May 12th. Take a listen to our conversation and hear what he says about his musical connection to New Jersey, the inspiration for his album, and what fans can expect at his solo performance.
Well, I went to middle school and high school in Princeton, New Jersey, and in middle school I had my English teacher was this guy Eugene Doherty, who's sort of a legend in Princeton. Taught in that school system for a couple decades, and there's sort of this cult of Eugene Doherty. The guy was just such an amazing, creative writing teacher, and I always had kind of a penchant for creative writing, and I come at songwriting from a very kind of creative writing based approach, and this guy was such a character. He fought in World War II at the Battle of Iwo Jima and got his right arm blown off, like halfway up his forearm. He's a right-handed guy, so he would actually use his left hand for a lot of things, even though it wasn't his dominant hand, but at that point it was his only hand. And he would sit in class, and he was really into fly fishing. He would tie flies and talk to us about fly fishing in Vermont. And it was kind of like having John Wayne and Ernest Hemingway as your English teacher. And he just had such a flair for storytelling and teaching. And also, he's the only teacher I ever had that really made grammar and sentence structure interesting. And so I kind of came away from that class with a real interest in writing. And then in high school, at the end of middle school, we were just picking our high school courses, and I don't know, because I was in AP biology. Somehow I ended up in AP biology. So I had an extra credit, and I had an extra elective. So I was looking through the electives, and there was this class called music theory. And I was like, music theory? I'd never seen those two words put together. So that's the theory of music. Yeah, I suppose there's a theory of music. It must be melodies and rhythm and the concepts behind music. I was like, I like music. I take guitar lessons. I'm gonna take music theory as my other elective. And it turned out that Portia Sonnenfeld, teacher of that class, was just a very, very brilliant teacher and a very, very brilliant musician. And so that got me into chord progressions and all these musical ideas and just composition, music composition, sort of broke that down. So, I just suddenly was putting together, these rudimentary guitar playing skills and kind of a, burgeoning talent as a creative writer and music theory. And then, at freshman year in high school, I just started writing tunes, and that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. And that was sort of the segue into...
literally all she wrote.
You're and that was that. Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, I love learning that, it really did start at such a young age. And, it seems like you are very accomplished in the solo arena. Of course, you are very well known for your position with the Spin Doctors. But, do you find that... especially with this solo album that's coming up, that you're able to extend your creative talents or maybe apply some of your own, emotional or personal characteristics into your music when you're doing solo albums versus when you're working with the Spin Doctors?
Yeah, I mean, it's inherent in the form, of solo project that you're sort of like the lead, you know, creative person. I mean, I'm the principal songwriter of the Spin Doctors, so
Right.
thematically I have a lot of kind of, you know, my sphere of influence really kind of falls into that whole, like, you know, thematic lyric world. But yeah, it's I've been playing guitar since I was a kid, and in the Spin Doctors I don't play guitar, and which is like a real conscious decision. I really like being, you know, what I call like the open-handed frontman. You know, just like a Mick Jagger or you know, Roger Daltrey, where I don't have anything in my hands. I'm just free to move around, and you know, I mean, the other thing is I've always been a pretty strong singer, and probably if I'm a virtuoso at anything, it's like singing. And so that's nice that, you know, and Eric Shankman is just, you know, such a fabulous guitar player. And that band is in a large part a vehicle for his guitar playing and for the drumming and the bass playing of Aaron Comas and Mark White, respectively. And, you know, that conceptually that band and structurally that band is sort of about four voices, all with, you know, somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? Not equal. What's it called? Not equivalent. I'll think of this word at 2:00 in the morning when I'm trying to go to sleep. You know, but like, you know, like we're all kind of like sharing. We're taking turns being selfish, kind of. You know, we're all just kind of like just stepping to the front and being like the main thing. In turn. Whereas, yeah, like, you know, I as a solo artist, you know, I made this record and it's fully arranged. Some of the songs are you know, have strings and horns and, you know, almost orchestral arrangements on them, and then some of them are sort of more stripped down, and it's like an accordion and a tuba and my guitar and me singing, you know. But when I'm playing live, it's just me and the guitar, and that's how I started out. That's like you know, when I was a teenager writing tunes, that was me in the schoolyard, just like being like, hey, I wrote a song, you know, and that's kind of still what I'm doing, and I was super influenced as a young person by guys like Bob Dylan, but also guys like Johnny Lee Hooker and Robert Johnson and Reverend Gary Davis, that were, you know, just solo acoustic songwriters, and they were getting these tunes across, you know, just on a guitar and voice. At some point, you know, there's this record that I really loved in middle school, The Secret Policeman's Ball, and it was also like a film, and it was just, you know, a bunch of different artists, and they had Sting just doing Roxanne. I think it was Roxanne, just alone on a guitar. And at some point, I don't know if I read an interview of him or somebody told me that he had said this or something, but somebody was like, you know, Sting says, like, if you can't get up and like entertain a crowd, just you and an instrument alone, then you're not really much of a musician, and I or you're missing, you know, your musicality is sort of missing out on a certain aspect. And I latched onto that, you know, as a young guy, as, you know, like a freshman in high school, 8th grader. I was like, that's cool. I love that. And ever since then, I've just been like really into that whole kind of, cause it's like a thing, you know, just being one person with an instrument and getting a tune, especially somehow with a guitar. There's something very, like, you know, it's kind of unique American art form, that the singer songwriter with the guitar, and that like American impulse of like self-expression and individualism is just sort of beautifully on display in that form of performance. And so, yeah, I mean, and to get back to your original question, like, there's, you know, it's just me and a guitar, so I'm in control of like every note that's coming off of the stage and coming out of the speakers when I'm doing that. It's just, you know, me and the guitar. So yes, it's like inherently very much the sort of poet, if I may. It's a bit pretentious, but the lyricist, troubadour, singer, instrumentalist, and that's a lot of fun for me. It's a lot of fun to just be up there and I can just like tell a story and then play a tune and change the feeling of the music, which is something you can do in an ensemble. You can kind of move the music around, but you can't just like stop in the middle of a song or slow it down like significantly just on the turn of the dime. And so I really enjoy just kind of being up there, and there's no one to blame but myself. If you make a mistake, you have to cover. It's all on you. And I've always liked that.
Well, kind of in that same vein, you talk about like, this is you. These are your lyrics. These are kind of what you're putting together. It's your story, and it extends beyond what you're sometimes able to do under the umbrella of the Spin Doctors. But thinking of that, something I read, and I don't know if it was a direct quote or just more of sort of something that was written, but, it seems like you've said in the past you almost feel compelled to write the music that chronicles the here and now. Westfield residents are very much entrenched in a very sophisticated political landscape. You'd mentioned sort of, the guitar and the singer being like this super kind of unique American art form, and also kind of like sharing the stories of the here and now. Even sometimes providing the consolation of a world that's changed beyond recognition. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth, about the role of like politics in music. I think that in some ways, just being purely entertaining is like an incredibly political act. I think that like making people happy and bringing consolation to people is like the main job of an entertainer, and then throwing in your opinions, into the in between the lines of what you're saying, and illustrating, sort of through like allegory and like the parable of a song, and not necessarily ramming it down people's throats until you like kind of have a moment where you've sort of worked an audience into an open moment where you can maybe throw a dart, or shoot an arrow into the heart of your subject matter. Like I really am not crazy about what's going on these days, and every day I get more profoundly perturbed by what's going on. And I am from New York City, so like, and I've lived here since 1988, so I'm like acquainted with all of the players in this, that are on the field at the moment. Donald Trump, Rudolph Giuliani, Michael Cohen, and Hillary Clinton. They've all, like, she was my senator. Like, so I mean, I met Donald Trump back in the day, and I think like right now, like if we're going to talk about the here and now, like today, I'm just like so tired of like the rudimentary, lame, carpetbagging level of the discourse that's coming out of this like moment in time that's just constantly the discourse is being dragged down into this like stupid chicanery every day. It's there's another tweet that's like just so moronic, and I like it's really tiresome. I mean, you're talking about a sophisticated political landscape. Are you saying that like some people are for this administration and some people are against it?
I'm keeping those cards close to the chest. I guess what I'm saying is, Westfield, we're a small town, and I've only been here for about 5 years, but I just, in the last elections, we elected a new mayor, and it is so crazy. As someone who I'll admit to not being totally politically inclined, but it is so crazy to me to see just how fractured even a small community is, with some kind of themes that seem to be trickling down, or I should say be trickling upward from DC to New Jersey's tiny little suburbs. So I just, I was just curious, I had read the line in one of the articles I had read about you, and I guess you answered that question in the way that I was thinking you would answer it, in the fact that, sometimes the artists, while they shouldn't be tasked with making a political statement, sometimes their delivery of the messages are more well received because they are delivered with a dose of sort of levity. I don't know if that's the right word, or like a dose of like, maybe people are sort of in the right state of mind to be receptive of political insights when they're listening to art. I guess that would be maybe what I'm going with.
Art is looking at a bowl of fruit
and
tilting your head and squinting your eyes and knowing that there are a million billion things about that bowl of fruit that you don't normally think about. That it's composed of trillions of like tiny particles, or that the light is hitting it in this moment in a way that it's never going to hit it again. Right. And that simultaneously with like the revolution of all of the electrons and the atoms of every single one of those pieces of fruit, there are like tidal waves of liquid oxygen washing up on mountains of ice on a distant planet, and that we think we are the sum total of everything that's going on, but there's a universe dancing all around us. And that being said, Donald Trump is a fucking moron, and like, Mexicans aren't taking your jobs, machines are. You walk into a fucking supermarket and all the checkout things are automated. That's who's taking your job, not Mexicans. Like, we're all in this together. Grow up. It's a big world, and it's getting smaller every day. And like, the sooner we realize it's one planet, and yes, the world is getting warmer, and everybody in the world, I travel all over the world, and everybody thinks like we're idiots for electing this guy. They can't believe it. And the dude is, and I've been watching this guy since 1988 and earlier, since earlier than that, because I've been, I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and I was close enough to New York City to watch this guy everything that moved, and I know him. Everybody knows somebody who like hired this guy and he didn't pay them, and it's the saddest thing in the world to watch people. I'm not angry at people because they really believe he's going to make America great again. Because that's like such a great slogan. Good for him. He really came up with a great slogan. Right. But the guy can't sell a steak, and he's a lying sack of shit. And people. One of the great things about Americans is like we like a simple message, and he's got a simple message. It's just, unfortunately, it's all bullshit. So Sorry everybody.
No, that's
Don't if you don't like it, don't come to my show. But I hope people will still come to my show because I can still sing and play guitar even though I hate Donald Trump.
right. That's a good tag. I like that. No, but it's, I think you can, with the passion, comes the art. And I think that plays well. Just when I read that little nugget of information, I was like, I feel like there's more here. So I'm glad I dug a little bit. And I think that that's, in keeping with a lot of people in this community. And it's interesting to hear that from somebody, of your caliber. So that's
I met
great.
the dude. He's a reptile. I looked into the man's eyes, and like there's no soul in there. That guy, and also, I grew up with a malignant narcissist for a stepmom, and I know a borderline personality disorder when I see one,
Mm-hmm.
and that guy, the whole thing of just keeping everything in disarray all the time. I mean, I feel sorry for people who, at first I was just like, I can't believe this guy got collected. I was like angry,
Right.
At the people who voted for him. But I'm not angry anymore. I just feel sorry for them because you see interviews with people on television, and they've swallowed a whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That really doesn't make any sense, but it would be so nice if it was true. It'd be
Right.
great if we could just be like, oh, it's all the Mexicans' fault. It's Canada's fault. It's China's fault. It's, there's no global warming. Everything's, that's just a big scam. We can just keep doing whatever the hell we want to do. I wish it was, as simple as that, although I don't really, because I don't really espouse like blaming people for stuff. I think that's scapegoating people's, it's scary.
Yeah.
Fascist bullshit. But okay, so let's change.
Moving on. Okay. No, this was good. But I mean, I think that's good insights from you, and I'm glad that you shared that with me, and that's good. Okay, so going back, all right, let's go back to Angels and One-Armed Jugglers. So, I need to know more about Adelaide. Is that the old chorus girl?
Yeah, she was my neighbor when I first made like a little bit of money, and I was able to like move into like any apartment that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I got this apartment on Waverly Place in New York, just off of Washington Square Park,
Mm-hmm.
in this really cool, like it was my first like doorman building apartment, and I lived in 4C, and Adelaide lived in 4D, and she was my next door neighbor, and she would just like, I'd run into her in the elevator, and she would like just be like, come on in, and like sit me down at her kitchen table and give me like just gross like liqueur, like something like, I'll have a drink, and pour me like a limoncello or some just cloying, horrible, like, sambuca kind of thing, and just tell me stories about, being a chorus girl, like a hoofer, like a gypsy,
Uh-huh.
On Broadway, in the, 40s, 50s, and I just loved her,
Mm-hmm.
and she was kind of my like 80-year-old girlfriend a little bit, and then I moved out of that apartment, and I like it happens, just an old neighbor, you just never see them again. But
Right.
I was driving across the 59th Street Bridge, just thinking about her, coming back from Queens, and she just popped into my head in that first line, like angels and one-armed jugglers, sword swallowers and smugglers, good old Adelaide, she must be long gone. She like popped into my head, and I just started writing it down on the steering wheel of the car, doing like 50 miles an hour on the Queensboro Bridge.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where the song is more important than like the physical safety of, I suppose, myself and those around me. But I can actually write and drive at the same time, because I don't look at what I can write without looking.
Right.
Now,
Quick
I'm
notes.
so used to jotting things down. Actually, it'd be funny to find the notebook that's on, because I'm sure I have this funny style of writing when I'm not looking, where I sort of, it gets splayed down the page in this sort of waterfall of words, because each line I'm trying harder not to write over the previous line. But yeah, that was Adelaide, and then I was like, Angels and One-Armed Jugglers. To my wife's like, I think that's a good album title.
I like it.
And she was like, it's a good song title, but I don't think you should call the album that. And I was like, I know, it's a little outlandish, isn't it? And she was like, yeah, you should call your record that. And it's like, nah, probably not. And then, like, all my friends were like, call your record Angels or One-Armed Jugglers. I went on this tour of the UK, and my friends in the UK, who are also very, like, plain spoken. You can't call. My friend Latch wanted me to call it Adelaide. Wanted me to call the record Adelaide. So you call it Adelaide. And then I was like, I just couldn't get away from that title. And there's a great interview that I read with Keith Richards, where he was like, you have to be sort of careful when in the very inception of like a song or a project, because sometimes you just put like dummy lyrics in there, and then you can never get away from those dummy lyrics. And then just one morning, we're drinking coffee, and my wife's like, I think Angels and One-Armed Jugglers is a pretty good title. And I was like, bam!
And
done.
wives know best, so done.
Like, yeah, there's no turning back. So, and now it's funny because the record's out, and, it's critically the best received thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And, which has been really gratifying. It's always nice when the latest thing you've done is the thing that people like the most. And so now it's sort of this foregone conclusion. Like, everybody's like, I love that title.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Like, you have no idea how I agonized over that freaking title. It seems like a foregone conclusion now, but it actually was the product of a lot of, like, hand wringing.
Right. No, I think it's cool. And I think, in something I've read, you sort of call yourself that one-armed juggler. You mentioned it just a minute ago. And I read something about the voice cord paralysis. Like, is that sort of the link there, or are there other one-armed juggler experiences that you can relate to?
Well, when I wrote the line, I was before I lost my voice, mm-hmm. and it really was I just thought it was a great sort of metaphor, of just we all are. Modern existence is just fraught with being overwhelmed and anxiety and trying to keep, more balls in the air than you have hands to deal with. And then I lost my voice, and I lost my voice for a year. I had a paralyzed vocal cord, and at the end of this year, I was singing again. I did all kinds of stuff to get my voice working again, and I was back in the office with my doctor, and he's like, "You sound great. You did a solo gig. You did a Spin Doctors gig. It went really well. Like, let's scope your vocal cords, and it's going to be great. There looks like they're like completely mobile mm-hmm. again." And did the scope, and he was like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "What?" He was like, Your right vocal cord is still largely immobile."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't really know how you're singing and talking the way you are. It seems that you've learned to use the musculature of the right vocal cord, the paralyzed vocal cord, the affected vocal cord, against the left vocal cord, the mobile one. And I basically have gained the vertical mobility, so I can stretch my vocal cords, so I have like all of my range, mm-hmm. but I don't have lateral mobility. I can't move the right vocal cord over to the left vocal cord to make them resonate against each other. So I've learned to basically brace the immobile vocal cord against the left vocal cord, the mobile one. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just singing. I'm a one-armed juggler.
A one-armed vocal cord juggler. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. It's kind of amazing to see how your body like compensated for that. Like that's.
Well, my wife was like amused and pissed at the same time. She calls me the king of mind over matter. She's
right.
Like, only you would just like lose a vocal cord and just learn to sing without it. Because you got to understand, like I thought it came back. You know, I thought it was working.
Right.
You know, like I went in there and we were all. My doctor came to a spin doctor's gig a few weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, he specializes in paralyzed vocal cords. Like
right.
This is, you know, he sees every day.
Yeah.
He's seeing. It's a very, very rare, but in the panoply of like, you know, the millions of people who go through, you know, medical difficulties, it's something he sees fairly often because
right.
that's his specialty. It's like my lawyer friend who was like explaining the life of a lawyer, you know, and he was like, you ever heard of anybody's cabinets falling off of their walls? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, you know, somebody walks in here once a week and their cabinets have fallen off the walls. There you go. One of those things, you know, it's what you see when you have a certain job.
Right. You're like in that playing field. It's probably commonplace. Well, that's super cool. So like your doctor thinks like it's just, he's never seen someone overcome it like that. That's like definitely a testament.
According to him, it's like a medical. He's like, you're a medical miracle.
Mm-hmm. That's cool though. That's like another, I like that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad
all I care about is singing. I don't really care how I'm doing it.
Right. Well,
I can do it.
I was going to ask that, you know, like you'd mentioned, like, yes, it's very rare, but, you know, your doctor sees tons of people with it. And like, I'm sure it happens. And I think, you know, for me, I have to whisper or, you know, like I lose part of my voice so I can't yell at my kids. Right. But like for you, like a musician, a lyricist, a songwriter, like how did that like impact any future songs that you've written or impact your art in any way?
You know, it had a huge impact on this record because I came away from this. I didn't do a lot of music while my voice was messed up. Mm-hmm. I worked very hard on getting my voice back, so I did a lot of vocal exercises, mm-hmm. and I went to a speech pathologist. I went to because speech pathologists, you know, you think that speech pathologists just work on, you know, lisps and stuff like that, but they're actually like, you know, they're pretty much doctors, and mm-hmm. they work on the entirety of, you know, your vocal production, so they know all kinds of stuff about vocal cords. She had me like, you know, standing on like, you know, those things that the trainer has where it's like half of a sphere and there's like a plastic bottom of it.
Yeah, the Brochu ball thing. Is that what it's
called?
Yeah,
yeah. She had me standing on one of those and like vocalizing and like, you know, doing stuff with pulling on rubber strips while I was vocalizing, and she was amazing, and I was going and still getting voice lessons, and I did Alexander technique with this amazing woman, did Calvi, and you know, I did a ton of stuff. I have this thing that I do when I have a problem. I call it like throwing the book at it.
Yeah.
If I have a cold, I'll take vitamin C and echinacea and like this crazy wellness formula and some Chinese herbs and like, you know, make chicken soup, and I'll just like go freaking berserk, you know.
Right.
On any problem that I have, I just go crazy on it. But I didn't do any music. I really felt like kind of betrayed and angry. Mm-hmm. At music, which is sort of stupid, I suppose, but it's just, you know, I had this sort of emotional reaction. It was sort of like, fuck you, music. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just, you know, do other things. So I actually did it. I got into chess because I played chess as a kid. So mm-hmm. I was taking chess lessons and just doing other things, and I only wrote one song. I wrote the song "I'm Gonna Need Someone" that's on the record. It's like the fourth song on the record, I think.
Yep.
That's the only song I wrote. I was sort of like sitting around thinking about like how awesome my wife was while I just like moped around and felt like shit for a year, and that's the only song I wrote. But when I did get my voice back, then I had come into this project thinking like, okay, I'm gonna do like sort of a stripped down acoustic record that's gonna reflect the way I'm going to go out and tour. You know, right. I'm going to go out and tour this thing like solo acoustic, so I'm going to like kind of do a toned down, stripped down production. And when I got back, I was like, that. like Roman had sort of, when I explained that approach to Roman, he had just sort of, Roman is the producer of the record. He just kind of grinned at me. Yeah. And he has a funny way of like agreeing with you and disagreeing with you at the same time. And he had just kind of like just been like, yeah, we'll do what's right for the songs. Like, yeah, anything you want. Yeah, okay, cool. And but I knew like it's actually funny because if I hadn't had like the break, I don't know if I would have like had time to interpret his reaction to that. But slowly, like that reaction kind of seeped in over time, and I just had time to sort of process like his skepticism about that approach. And when I got back, I was like, okay, let's call Sean Pelton, who played drums on the record. He's just, like, I'm a drummer snob because I play with one of the best drummers in the world. Eric Gomez is just like, it's one of the first things people usually tell me. Usually people come up to me about the Spin Doctors, and they're just like, the first thing is like, I really like your band. And this next thing people usually say is like, one of the guys in the band just blew their mind. One of them is, a huge influence on, they're a guitar player. They're like, Eric, completely changed the way I looked at the instrument. Or, Aaron is such an amazing drummer. And the first time I heard that fill at the beginning of Two Princes, I just had never heard anything like that. So, I was like, am I going to play with somebody who's not Aaron?
Right.
It's going to be Sean Pelton.
Yeah.
who played on Saturday Night Live.
Yep.
So immediately, his playing his tone is so big, and his approach to like a recording session is so iconic, and he's such a locker room presence in a session. He really the drummer is kind of like in the initial stage of recording a song, the drummer is kind of in command because they have to like lay down the track, and then they can't really change anything from then on out. And so, yeah, this sort of bigger, more, it went from a still life to a landscape a little bit, with the addition of Sean, and then from there out, all the players that we have are just people I've admired and been colleagues with for such a long time. These guys are all such fantastic players, and but yeah, I mean, it kind of came from that thing of like, wow, I lost my voice. Like I woke up one morning, couldn't sing. So you don't know. I'm gonna step in the street, and, Kanahara, God forbid, I get hit by a bus. So like, just let's make this record count, because why pussyfoot around?
Yeah, no, I could see where something like that would definitely keep me motivated to, take meaningful steps in the next part of my life. I can see that for sure. So one of the things you'd said, and something I'd read, the songs on this album, they're super, they sound amazing with sort of all the embellishments, right? The people you'd mentioned, they seem like they really sort of amplified a lot of the stuff that you'd put out there. I read something, you kind of played it for them on your iPhone, you sent it to them, and then all of a sudden they turned around with this like almost like orchestric, if that's even the right word for it, if that's even a word, but this, beautiful thing. But then I also feel like, and I read this someplace else, that, there is a very like beautiful acoustic element to this that, to your point, simply guitar and your voice is enough. And I guess I'm curious, people who come to see you in Scotch Plains on May 12th, what are they going to get? What are they going to see? Is it going to be the very embellished version or the raw version?
No, I mean, it's going to be just me and a guitar, which I think, well, I know, people have been coming out and if they've heard the record, I think it's pretty fascinating for people to see the song just stripped down to its most basic elements, because it's the chords and, the guitar accompaniment and me. So if you want to kind of really dig into the song, that's what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is that, I think one of the things that I really like about just playing me and a guitar is like, you don't have a song, you can't just play it on a guitar. Right. You need to have a song there, and so people get to kind of see, the song with no production at all, mm-hmm. and I've slaved over these tunes, and I've slaved over my skills as a songwriter throughout my life since I was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. So, what you're gonna see is like a guy, who's really worked hard on writing tunes, playing tunes that he's worked really hard on. Right. And I'll be playing like, I'm gonna perform my record mm-hmm. In sequence order, which happens to be alphabetical order, which is kind of crazy.
Was that intentional or no?
What happened was we did the mixes and then, I got the files sent to me in like a Dropbox file. And because we didn't have a sequence yet, there weren't, track numbers at the beginning of So Dropbox, if there aren't track numbers, Dropbox will just organize it into alphabetical order. Right. And so I, in the interest of just listening to the mixes in a systematic way and not like, missing any of them, I just listened to them from top to bottom in the Dropbox, which was alphabetical order. And I sent Roman a text like, hey, listen to the tunes just in alphabetical order like they are on the Dropbox. And he texted me back 45 minutes later and he was like, we are putting the record in that order.
You're like, this is perfect.
Yeah, it sounded great. And there's also like, let's face it, there's sort of a badass element of like, we just put these songs in alphabetical order and they sounded great. Like we didn't even have to like, the songs are so good you don't even have to make an order for them. And then when I was mastering the record, mastering is like sort of last phase of the sonic treatment that the record gets to get the record sonically ready to go to the manufacturer and to put the candy coating on it. Right. Ted Jensen at Sterling Sound is this legendary, mixing engineer. Mastering engineer, and he's just done like a ton of iconic records, all the Tom Petty stuff and Bruce Springsteen's stuff. He did Pocketful of Kryptonite, the Spin Doctor's big hit record, and right. So I've known him for a long time, and I came into the session and he's like, "Are these in alphabetical order?" I was like, "Well, yeah."
Funny that you say that.
He's like, "Wow, that's pretty bad." I don't think I've ever seen that before. He's like, I might have seen it before, but I don't think it worked, Right. I was like, this is a great order. And I was like, thanks, man. So the last thing you do when you're mastering the record is you check the two sides of the record, because we're putting this out on vinyl. So you make sure that the two sides of the record are commensurate in length. So you don't have one side that's like, 12 minutes and the other side is like 40.
Right.
So he timed out the first side of the record, and he timed out the second side of the record. He goes, holy shit. And I was like, what? I thought he'd erased my record or something, and he's like, "Look at this." He timed out the first side, and it's like 40. It's like 26 minutes and 42 seconds, and then he started timing out the second side. And, like, the hair stood up on my arm because I knew what was about to happen.
Yeah.
And it was the same length.
Isn't that crazy?
And
that's sort of
two sides of the record are the exact same length. And, this is a guy who's mastered, like, thousands of records. So I turn around, and I'm like, have you ever seen that before? And his eyes are like saucers. He looks like a 10-year-old kid. And he goes, no, and it's in alphabetical order. So there's a bunch of, like, magic stuff about this record. It's kind of a magical record. Some of the performance stuff is really very special. There's little things that the guys did, like, in the World According to Garm.
Yeah.
And in the second verse, the first line is, the tuba has been drinking. And, like, the tuba does this, like, funny, like, funny little cadenza kind of thing, like the tuba's drunk. Or in Too Young to Fade, the last song, there's a line like, I'm on the high wire while the lava boils below, and Sean does, like, a little press roll, like like as if it's a circus.
Yeah.
You're looking up at a guy and so it's just it's a really, I kind of finished this record. Roman and I finished this record, and we had worked on everything until we listened to it and, like, locked eyes and the hair stood up on our arms. Like, we really, like, made sure every song had, like, everything it needed to just kind of create a very crystalline moment, that made you really aware of the music and your existence a little bit. And, and so to go back to the question, if you've heard the record, I think people will find it really interesting to see me, like, interpret these tunes, just me and a guitar. And if you haven't heard the record, and you hear me do these tunes, just me and a guitar, I think, the record's been selling like freaking hotcakes at the gigs. Like, I'll perform the record. I'll do, people know, if you're a Spin Doctors fan, I'm going to do, like, the Spin Doctors favorites, and a couple Spin Doctors deep hits. I mean, that's one of the fun things about coming to a Spin Doctors show.
Right.
Coming to a Chris Barron show is I do tunes that, like, never play.
Right.
So you can hear something that you'll never hear the Spin Doctors play. And I'll play, I play, like, This Can't Be Wrong and Two Princes.
Yeah.
The
classics,
well.
Exactly. Oh, that's cool. No, I think that's like a nice way to blend the two, and it helps.
Yeah, and I'm proud of those tunes. I it's funny. A lot of artists act like it's some kind of concession. Solo artists act like it's some kind of concession to play their hit tunes. I think that's so stupid. I don't get that at all. I'm like, these are the songs that have afforded me the ability to play music for a living for the rest of my life,
right.
Knock on wood, So, like, people are like, you get tired of playing your hits? I'm like, do I get tired of playing a song that I wrote and watching people go nuts? No, I don't. I, like, actually don't get tired of that. That's, I think I'm lucky too, because I actually think Two Princes and Little Miss Can't Be Wrong are good songs.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of, like, I think they were, hits because they were like novelties, but also because, structurally they're strong. They got strong bones as songs. So as a result, they're fun to perform. I'm glad. The song that kept Two Princes out of number one was Icky Breaky Heart.
Oh gosh, I definitely didn't know that, and that's
yeah. And
too bad.
I'd sort of rather have Two Princes have just sort of, stayed at number 2 and not really broken through, and play Two Princes for the rest of my life than, have a number 1 and have to play Icky Bricky Heart for the rest of my life.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's so true. It's a good way to look at it. I do really like that. I like that. Well, you said something that's sort of interesting, like, is it like do you sort of begrudge having to play these songs? But, no one is to assume that Spin Doctors is going anywhere. It's still intact. You still play with them. This is just another extension of your artistry. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I'd like to make that really clear. Yeah, the Spin Doctors are still together. It's the original lineup,
mm-hmm.
and we do a lot of gigs every year. We're playing 40 gigs a year, something like that.
Wow.
And this is just like me. I just I've always played this way, like just solo acoustic. But I've never really put a concerted effort into kind of building up a circuit and just going out and consistently, playing this way. So I'd like to do another 40 gigs a year, just solo acoustic.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it's just, it's just another way to play and another way to just do my job.
Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us here at TAPinto Westfield. I really appreciate your time. And folks, if you're interested in seeing Chris Barron live, make sure you purchase your tickets at jccnj.org. He'll be joining us May 12th, Saturday, right here at the JCC in Scotch Plains.